Hi, my name is Stevie and I like to write songs. Since starting this YouTube channel, I have written 21 songs and I've shared with you the entire creative process from writing the initial chords and lyrics right through to getting the song completely structured. We've reached the stage now with these productions that I want to finalize them completely, get them mixed, mastered and released. So in the current phase that I'm at, I'm calling this macro mixing because this is the big moves, the big decisions that I want to make about all the songs. For example, what stuff's going to be on the 2-bus, what's going to be the final EQ for the rhythm guitars and so on. So today what I want to work on is making a decision once and for all about how I want to approach delay throws on the vocals and making a decision about what I would like on the 2-bus. So we're going to work on 2-bus EQ today and whatever mastering plugins I decide to use. So it's a lot to get on with today, so let's go. When I say delay throws, what I'm talking about is that we can have delay on vocals, but it tends to mush up the vocals and cloud the intelligibility of the vocals if we have delay all the time. So what we want to do is have delay at the ends to fill in the gaps between phrases. So we throw the vocals out to the delay at certain points during the song, and it's not always going to the delay all the time. So let's look at some strategies and approaches for setting up delay throws, and I'll choose one that will be my go-to for this production going forward. I have set up a vocal track here. If we put it into record mode and record some vocals. 1, 2, 3, 4. And let's hear that back. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so let's say, for example, that we want to only have delay on 4. So let's try and set that up. So what we do, start up a new track and put some delay on it. Okay, so now we've got this delay here. And if we drag from the right button onto this, that'll set up our delay throw. And let's hear what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4. You see the problem there? There's far too much delay. So let's set up an automation that only has delay on number 4. So if we select this track send volume, we get an automation lane. And if I drag the automation lane to off completely, we won't have any delay anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So now we can turn it on exactly where we need it here. Let's see what that sounds like. 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. That's the simplest way of doing a delay throw. And it's very effective. I like it. Now here's a problem with that. If we were to have a new phrase coming in. Okay. So what happens now if we listen to the delays? 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Can you hear how the delay is overlapping the new phrase? This is something that can sometimes cause problems. What you would like is for the delay to stop before the new phrase starts. So there's a few ways that we can do this. So one thing we could do is put a gate after the delay. Let's just try re-gate. We can sidechain this by taking the route from here and putting it on here. So it now becomes the sidechain feed for the gate. So we can select auxiliary inputs. So what's happening right now is that the delay, although we can't hear it because it's a slow delay, it's only happening when the gate opens for the vocals. But we can reverse that function, invert gate, or ducking delay as it's sometimes called, which means in between the phrases we'll hear the delay. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So what we have now, once we set the threshold correctly, and I could tamper with the threshold a lot longer to get a nicer feeling, but what we have now is the delay is ducking behind the vocals every time we hear the vocals. 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now that's the gate way of doing it. We could turn off the gate and we could use a compression instead. And let's do the same thing. Let's route down the sidechain to the compressor. What's happening here is that the compression is pulling the sound of the delay down when you can hear vocals. and then it's allowing it to come back up again when there are no vocals. And that's also a good way of doing it. But there is a problem for me with both these setups, and I'll try and explain it now. It's very common that when I write a vocal phrase, I'll maybe do a high sustained note at the end of the phrase, and I want delay on that high sustained note. Let's emulate it here now by doing something very straightforward. Let's record vocals again. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so I want to put delay on the sustained 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right, so if we go back to our delay and put on, say, one of these ducking delay settings and give ourselves a delay through. And listen to it now. 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't like the way the delay waits until the sustain is over, even if we try it with the compression setting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Right? Can you hear that? In both settings, in the compressed setting. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's quite a nice effect, the way the delay fades in there. It doesn't happen when we use the gated version. 1, 2, 3, 4. And if we listen to it with no ducking at all. 1, 2, 3, 4. Obviously, that's not the exact delay sound that I would want. Let's maybe set it to something a wee bit more like what I might want. Let's maybe set it to a quarter note delay and turn the output down a wee bit. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the kind of effect that I want on my vocals, and I could do it with the ducking delay settings, but it would mean adding an extra channel of automation just to fix something that I don't really think I need in the first place, because I could always set the feedback on the delay so that it doesn't overlap the vocals. So my preference here would be to keep it quite simple, unless there's an absolute essential reason why you need ducking delay. My preference is to have a very straightforward delay that I can just set up as a delay through and not really concern myself with compressing it or gating it or anything like that, and just set the feedback to the right amount. What that basically means is that I'm going to revert back to the traditional way that I've always done delays. I really wanted to try this to see if it would work for me, but it's not my preference. I'll show you how I set it up now. So we'll clear all these, and I'll set up a new channel for the delay through. And in this, my preference is CLA effects. We'll turn off all the other things except for just the delay. And for now, we'll leave it at quarter note. We'll turn off the direct. It's got this delay through button. So the first thing we have to do is route it again like we did before. And we'll go to the trim. And we've got a delay send button. So now if I do this, we have the setup that we had before. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's it. That's the simple way that I like to set up mine. So it's very straightforward and easy, but if straightforward and easy works for you, then that's what you should do. Always keep things simple. So the good news is I'll not be going through any of the songs and changing the way delay throws are set up, because this is the way they are set up in all my songs, and this is the way I'm going to stick with it. Reaper has got a monitoring section where you can put plugins that happen outside of the DAW. So they don't affect what's actually happening to your song file, but you can use them for referencing and things like that. I always have a couple of plugins in it. The first one is Restream, and that's just a plugin that allows the output of my DAW to go straight into OBS for recording these videos. So it's not important right now. The second one is Metric AB, and this is where we'll be spending the majority of our time today. And after that, I've got SonarWorks. And currently SonarWorks is set to the studio monitors, so I'll set it to headphones for now because I'm working on headphones. So if we go back to Metric AB, within Metric AB, I can store songs that I want to use as reference songs for listening to in comparison to my finished track. And the songs I've selected for this particular song that we're working on now, Tree of Life, is Circus Maximus, Devon Townsend, Dream Theater, Pagan's Mind, and Symphony X. These are progressive metal bands that play a type of music that's very similar to the song that we're working on right now. Now, we're not going to be listening to any of these songs on this video in case YouTube gives me some kind of copyright strike. So I'll be listening to them myself and hopefully relaying to you what I can hear. But I want to do something a wee bit more interesting than that. I want to actually have a look at what the EQ differences are between my song. And so for that, I'm going to use Ozone. And I need to make sure that Ozone is in front of SonarWorks so that it's not being affected in any way by SonarWorks. And I'm going to use the tone match function, match EQ. So I can capture the reference track here and I can capture my track here and we can have a look at what the tonal differences are. So let's go ahead first and capture my track. You can light a fire in my heart, a perfect work. And now if we go to metric AB and switch over to one of these tracks, then when we hit play again, it'll capture the reference track. So let's capture the reference track. So I have the two tracks here, and if we turn up the amount, and I always find that at about 60 is where I'm starting to see something that looks like an EQ curve that I can understand. So we can see straight away that around 70, my track needs to be boosted. Around 120, it needs to be cut. Around 500 at quite a wide Q, it needs to be cut a bit. And there's an issue here. I'm guessing that in my master track, I've got these notch filters in. So I think these should probably be turned off so that we can get a more accurate reading. Because if I'm going to be making the EQ myself from scratch, then I don't need any of this stuff. I can undo that. So let's capture my track again without this notch filter in it. So turn back to my track and recapture my track without that notch filter. You can light a fire. Now we're not seeing that notch filter anymore, and we can see we're pretty much okay. From about 700 hertz upwards, there's not a lot really that concerns me. It looks okay. There's a bit of a low pass filter going on here, and that doesn't particularly concern me either. What is very interesting to me is this hump at 70 and dip at 120. So one of the things I could do is actually steal this EQ and put it into my Nova EQ plugin. And the way I would do that is by using EQ Match. So I've inserted this plugin called EQ Curve Analyser by Bertom. You need to open up an instance that is actually generating the impulse, and then one afterwards that is actually reading the affected impulse. So this is now reading the same EQ curve as we see in here on Ozone 9. This EQ curve here, this white line. So we can see it here now. So what I can do is set up a new track in the song, add EQ Curve Analyser, 2 instances of it, one the generator and one that receives the impulse response. Put a Nova EQ in between them. We can see that these ones are on group 2 and these ones are on group 1. So I can look at group 2. We can see there group 2. Nova has a very flat EQ. So if I go to Nova now and start actually trying to make some EQ curves, I can see what they're doing. Turn off gain compensation. Make the Q a bit smaller and move that frequency down to try and match this frequency. Turn the gain down a bit. And that's not a bad match. Move on to the next one and we'll pull this down. Make the Q a bit smaller. Move the frequency down to match that one. The gain up a bit. Frequency down. Back to the first one and boost this boost the gain. So you can see that I'm starting to build up an EQ curve here on Nova that I could actually use as my master EQ. I don't want to use the Ozone match EQ function to make a match EQ. What I want to do is see what things I can learn about EQ from looking at these. So what I want to do is go through this process, making these EQ curves. Let's have a look at another let's see if we can add this little EQ hump here. Actually, it might be better to add that as a high pass to about there and pull the frequency down. Yep, something like that. And then we could put a small notch. Let's make it as small as we can make it. Yeah, something like that. Move the frequency up. You see? And as we go along, I can just make an EQ that actually tells me something about the main differences between my track and the professional tracks. So what I want to do now is finish making this EQ curve and then make an EQ curve for all the reference tracks to see what I can learn about EQ, about what makes my track sound different EQ-wise from professionally recorded tracks. So let's do that. So what I've done here is I have gone through all the tracks and made my EQ in Nova so that I can look at them all. And I've made 5 tracks here. Each of them has EQ Curve Analyzer by Bertom in front and behind so that I can compare all the EQs. So if we look at this EQ, we can see it here. And this is the Circus Maximus EQ that I captured. Now we can underlay 2. That's the Devon Townsend capture that I made. And under 3 is the Dream Theater capture that I made. Under 4 is the Pagan's Mind capture that I made. And under 5 is the Symphony X. Now, I think you'll notice something very strange that I also noticed myself. Very interesting. This bump that we're talking about here at around 70 Hertz and the cut at 120, it exists on almost all of the tracks. We look at Devon Townsend, it's slightly different, but it's very similar. And then if we look at Dream Theater, there it is again, slightly lower here, but also the 120 cut here. This one also has this cut here, but very low down on the bottom end. And this one also has the hump, a bit smoother and slightly lower down, but also the 120 cut. So I think we can pretty much strongly establish that one thing that we're seeing on all the tracks that are different from my track is that they all have slightly more energy at around 70 Hertz or 60 Hertz or that kind of region. And they all have a cut of almost 2 dB at 120. This is something that I definitely want to use going forward. Looking at all of them, I definitely kind of have discovered that this is the one I seem to like the best. I've had a listen to all of them, and this one sounds the best to me because not only does it sound the best, but it makes a lot of sense to me about the things that I've already discovered about my tracks. We know that this 70 Hertz boost and this 120 cut is something that we see on all the tracks, so there's no argument. We definitely want to do that. This is a 500 cut here, and we find all the time in tracks, almost every track I ever do, I cut about a 500 out of it. Things always seem to sound clearer and better and fuller and richer when you cut about a 500 out of it. So I totally agree with this move. Then we have the high shelf, and we have around 2K being cut out. Now, if you remember last week when we were EQing the guitars, this was a frequency that I noticed needed to be cut out of both the drums and the guitars. And this EQ curve suggests that that's something that we want to do again, even more. So we're cutting out even more 2K. And I agree with this, but I don't want to use this EQ as it stands. What I want to do is take this Nova EQ and start trying to experiment by moving around all the nodes of the EQ and make sure that it's the right thing for my track. So let's do that now. So I've added this EQ to the 2-bus of my song, Tree of Life. Let's listen to it. It's good, but I think it needs to be tailored a wee bit more carefully to fit my song. And when we look at the spectrum analysis of this track, I guess this node here is for boosting the fundamental of the kick drum, and we can see that my fundamental is a bit lower down towards 50. So at the moment it's on 73 Hertz. Let's boost it even more and move the frequency down. At about there, I think it's grabbing the fundamental of the kick drum a bit better. So let's go with 57. Let's look at the next node. This is the one that's pulling 120, 123 hertz out. Let's boost this and have a listen to what this frequency is and see if we can decide on an exact frequency for my track. I think I'm quite likely to go with that myself as well. So the next one I want to listen to is the 500 hertz cut and see if we can find a nice place for that to be. I can definitely hear what that's doing, and at around that frequency it does seem to be the right one, so let's reset it again. So the final one would be this 2K cut. So let's have a listen to that and see if we can tailor that. It's quite a whistly frequency. Right, okay, so I think that frequency should stay, but I also hear an extra whistly frequency that I would like to extract, and I think it's up at around 2K. So let's find that and add it. Let's copy the... Let's find that. Okay, so this is the EQ that I've sort of decided on that's tailored for the sound of my tracks. So let's A/B it. I like it. What I would like to do now is go back to metric A/B and do some comparisons with the reference tracks and see if I still think this EQ is improving the sound and making it sound more like those tracks. Yeah, I'm going to call that a winner and say that I like this EQ. What I would like to hear now is what does it sound like when I apply it to all the other tracks. So one of the things I was concerned about with this EQ is this hump here and this cut here. Is this something in the mixing of my tracks, or is this something that should just be added to the final EQ? Because it's quite an extreme piece of work. One of the things I was concerned about is maybe there's more bottom end on their tracks because they're not using track spacer. So I turned off track spacer on the bass guitar, but it still turned out that I needed this 50 hertz hump in my sound. I also thought maybe it could be that the kick drum's not loud enough, so I turned up the kick drum, and that didn't fix it neither. So it does seem to be that it is an EQ that's being added to these other tracks. I was thinking maybe it's a telltale sign that a Pultec has been added to the 2-bus on these other professional tracks. There's a thing that you can do with a Pultec where you can attenuate and boost the low frequencies both together, and it causes a sort of heightened bottom end with a scoop just above it. I'm thinking that quite possibly that's what this is, so that's what I've sort of reproduced here. So I'm happy enough with it, and what I would like to do now is listen to all the other tracks with this EQ added and see if it needs any more tweaking, or see if I'm happy with it just the way it is. So here it is on Rage Circuit Reflex. Yep, so I do think that it actually works on this as well. So, and I've already been through all the other tracks, and I think this is what I've settled on now. This is the EQ that I'll use going forward as my 2-bus master EQ. So the next thing I would like to look at is this master desk one, which is what I use for my limiting and loudness at the end of the track. I was doing a bit of research into 2-bus plugins over the last few weeks in preparation for what we're doing right now, and I couldn't fail to notice the buzz that's happening around the Jason Joshua plugin, God Particle. So I downloaded the demo of the Jason Joshua God Particle, and I really, really wanted to be as skeptical as I possibly could about it, because I don't really want to buy any more plugins. But after trying it, almost instantly, I fell in love with it. So unfortunately, I ended up having to buy it. So let's have a listen to what the God Particle sounds like on my track. Let's turn off Master Desk. The first thing, it's adding a lot more volume to the track than the Master Desk. We make sure we're hitting this green, and we make sure we're hitting the green here and here. This means that there's actually gain reduction actually happening in the low end and the mid. Not so much gain reduction happening in the highs, but we don't really want to compress the highs anymore anyway. I think what I'm trying to get is a slightly darker sound out of my tracks. Let's level match it so that we can check for sure that it's actually making a better sound. It's adding stereo width to the track, and it's adding some kind of compression breathing to the track, you know, and I really like it. I think it makes the track sound wider and deeper, which is a good thing. So I think maybe we have managed to establish what my 2-bus should be going forward, and it's this Nova EQ going into the God Particle. Very simple. What I would like to do now is go through all the tracks and find out if this is an improvement on my 2-bus over my old 2-bus. So let's have a quick blast through all the songs, A being my old 2-bus setup with the new 2-bus setup. I have these level matched so that there's not too much of a difference, but bear in mind the God Particle can give me an extra 2B of volume whenever I set it up finally. But for the sake of comparison, we're keeping the levels matched to give an even playing field. So let's hear it on 12. Definitely an improvement on that song. Like it. Deception, duplicity, integrity, treachery. It's heavier but clearer at the same time. It has quite a remarkable effect on that one. It makes that one a lot brighter. So I think the God Particle plugin is having an effect on how the overall balance of the track is, and if it thinks it's not bright enough, it's making it brighter. It's a cool plugin. Absolutely. Aspects of integrity, fighting with who you want to be. Okay. Some of these you only need to hear it kicking in once to know. That's definitely something that I want to use. It had that same effect of making the guitars brighter in that song. I'm finding the old versions quite stale sounding compared to the new one. The new one sounds more dynamic and in your face and easier to pick out all the different parts. Just slightly more pleasant to listen to. One for the road. One for the road. I got work in the morning and a wife on my back. The kids need shoes. I don't know. Sometimes I don't really like what it's doing to the guitars, you know. Maybe in some of the songs there's a high shelf on the master EQ, and maybe I need to pull that down on some of the songs just so that the God Particle is not brightening it up as much as it is. But for most of the songs, it's perfect. Songs like that, it's just no question, it's definitely better. As we dissect our failures, the vultures gather round us. They feast their eyes upon. We light the stage with the power and rage. We light the night like a 16 gauge. We walk back to disengage on the rampage. Well, that's one of the songs that's an outlier. It sounds very different from all the other ones, so we might need to treat this one a bit differently. They make the rules, control the fools like puppet masters. Sleepwalking hordes stumble towards their own disaster. Definitely. Okay, cool. There's 2 songs left to try. Very subtle difference there. Okay, and when I do ABs using the metric AB as well, there's no surprises there. All the songs sound quite similar to the reference songs. To my ears anyway. Maybe you need a more educated set of ears than I have. Okay, so in one way, what we achieved today is quite subtle. Adding the God Particle plugin and adding that master EQ setting has made the songs a tiny bit better. This is the important thing. Last week, we made the songs a tiny bit better by treating the drums and by properly EQing the rhythm guitars. And today we made them a tiny bit better again. So let's say we only made them 1% better last week and we made them 1% better this week. All those 1% add up. If you did that 12 times, then you're 12% better. Now that's a lot better. So these tiny, tiny subtle differences, they are very important and they do make a big difference because they accumulate over the course of all the decisions we make about the tracks. So I'll be very interested to hear what any of you guys think about what I did today. Have I gone completely wrong? Am I completely off on all of this stuff? Or am I moving in the right direction? Have you got any ideas about things I should try? What else can we do to make these tracks sound even better before we get down to the nitty-gritty of the individual mixing of all the automation parts and all the delay throws and all the individual things we're going to do to the tracks as standalone songs? So be very interested to hear what you guys have to say. Looking forward to your comments. Thanks so much, guys, for watching this video. You guys rock.